Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started. My name is Christine Mutch, and a warm welcome on behalf of the Hauenstein Center for Presidential Studies. I'm the program manager for the Peter C. Cook Leadership Academy, and we're really grateful for your presence here today. If you're unfamiliar, I know many of you are part of the Cook Leadership Academy, but for the handful of you who may be new, either virtually or here in person, to our Cook Leadership Academy, this is a cohort experience for a wide, diverse group of our student leaders from across campus. And together we think about what our own leadership philosophy, mindset, and skill set are in a cohort model that runs for a whole year. Part of that experience, it's very multifaceted, but we pull students together 4 times a year for what we call our Wheelhouse Talks. And our Wheelhouse Talks, we have our Wheelhouse down here, are really designed to bring in local and regional leaders to talk about an area that's in their wheelhouse, an area of their specialty, that they're specialized in, and also to share more about their leadership journey and philosophy and kind of the ups and downs of what leadership has meant to them. And so thank you for joining us in this. One time a year, we partner, with the GVSU's Frederik Meijer Honors College to bring in a speaker. And this particular series was endowed by Fred Meijer himself. And the goal was to have an opportunity to have students learn from entrepreneurs and innovators who are changing the way we look at business and community development. It is because of this generous endowment that we are able to offer tonight's program. So I'd like to now introduce to you Faye Richardson Green, who is the Meijer Endowed Chair for Entrepreneurship and Innovation in the Honors College. She's going to make a few introductions and announcements and then introduce our speakers for tonight.
It always amazes me how often I follow someone who's just a couple of inches taller than I am.
But
my grandchildren even say, Mima, everybody's taller than me. So I would like to welcome you as well to this event tonight. I'm always excited to come to this campus, to this auditorium, to hear the various speakers that we have an opportunity to bring in. My job is to thank folks, and I think I will collect maybe $1 for each person Hey, what do you think? Yeah, that sounds like a good amount. So the first thing I'd like to do is thank the staff at the Hauenstein Center, specifically Megan Radecki, Brent Holmes, and Kaylor Sweeney for their partnership. The fact that our parts of this organization can get together and do things collectively is just a testament to the kind of collaboration that happens throughout Grand Valley. Again, I'd like to thank Fred and Lena Meijer for their philanthropy, their willingness to support education, to support innovation and entrepreneurship, to ensure that students through this institution are getting an interdisciplinary education. The Meijer Foundation for supporting events like this, for supporting the Meijer Endowed Chair for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. I also would like to do a thank you to Roger Gillis, my boss, who is the dean at the Meijer Honors College, and Dean Mark Schaub, who is the leader for the Brooks School of or College of Interdisciplinary Studies. I just can never go anywhere without people wanting me.
Yes, sir.
So tonight's format is going to be a little bit different than what you might be used to. Usually we introduce a speaker, they come up here, they regale you for a while, and then somebody will come up, ask a couple of questions, and then you'll leave. Oh. We're going to do something similar yet different. So our speakers have been identified for you, through their bios on this sheet. So if you didn't get one, there are some in the back, and somebody can pass those forward. Our speakers are Rachel Berkal, Sadoc Paredes. Paredes. Okay, tell me how. Paredes. And Penny. Will be interesting to see what Penny has to say. We're going to start with 10 to 15 minutes of Rachel kind of telling you the initial pieces of Vetr's journey, her journey specifically. She will be joined in about 15 minutes by a former student, alumni from here, Vila. You know what? My job is to screw up names. What did I say? Vila Peñana. Oh my gosh, I did that part right. Why did I screw up the first part? I don't. Anyway, they will do an interview, and when that's done, you'll get a chance to ask some questions, and when that's done, you'll get a chance to eat. So, I think that I have done my job. Again, welcome. Please enjoy this next 40 minutes to an hour of really great information, and hopefully it'll trigger your thinking in ways that you will want to ask lots of questions at the end. So thank you.
Let me transport you back in time to the summer of 2020. I was newly single, quarantined alone in my one-bedroom apartment, learning TikTok dances, and swiping on Bumble. And let me tell you, the dating prospects were bleak. Until I met this guy, and it was a match. Now, I'll spare you the early pleasantries of our initial conversation and skip right to the good part. Sadoc says, "So you're obviously a model. What else do you do?" What a douche. Ugh. So I let him sweat it out for a few days until I finally agreed to go on a date with him. And not to spoil the ending, but we fell in love, got a dog, started a business together, and now we're getting married. Good evening. My name is Rachel Berkal. I am a co-founder of Vetr Health. I'm joined tonight by my co-founder and fiance, Sadoc Paredes, and our dog, Penny Lane. So, how did we go from matching on Bumble to this? We're going to start at the beginning. We're not going to start all the way that far back, but I just need a moment to appreciate my mother for dressing me like a C-suite executive from the ripe age of 4 years old. Look at this little business girl. No, we're going to start here at undergrad. iPhones were a lot worse back then. But like many of you in this room, I had absolutely zero idea of what I wanted to do when I grew up. I was raised with the expectation that I would go to college, get a good degree, and then start my career. So that's exactly what I intended to do. I was always an ambitious and good student, primarily fueled by my anxiety. But I thought, I'm smart. I'm going to be a doctor. Until I took my first biology course at Michigan and quickly realized I would not last another semester as a pre-med student. So I scrapped it. Then I learned about the business school, and I thought, that sounds like a path for me. I can do that. Until I realized that there were about 7 prerequisites, which I hadn't taken and would have to graduate late if I even got in. So I'm like, scrap it, forget it. Then I thought, okay, my dad's an attorney. How about I just go to law school, take over the family business? And he's still disappointed in me to this day that I am not a lawyer taking over the family business. Eventually, I settled on a liberal arts degree, thinking it would be an alternative path to something in business. And before my senior year, I desperately wanted to intern at Target in Minneapolis. I applied, interviewed, and didn't get it. But then shortly after that, I was offered an internship with a company based in Tennessee, and part of that internship was to send me to China for 2 weeks to learn about the global supply chain. So then, come fall, time to interview for post-grad opportunities. And at that point, I had Target's attention. and they hired me as a global sourcing business analyst, and I was off to Minneapolis to start my first big girl job. And I loved it. I worked there for almost 2 years until I got laid off. And at 23 years old, I was devastated. 23-year-old me doesn't get laid off. Old people get laid off. So I spent about 6 months job searching, and eventually I accepted an opportunity with Meijer, which brought me right here to Grand Rapids. Now, I grew up on the east side of the state, and for whatever reason, we shopped pretty much everywhere other than Meijer. So I knew relatively little about the organization before I took the leap. But the years I spent within that organization were truly transformative for my career. I took on roles in global sourcing, product development, and merchandising. They sent me all over the country and all over the world to source and buy product for multi-million-dollar categories. I sharpened my business and financial acumen. I learned what I loved about good leadership. And I learned what I didn't like about poor leadership. I saw how a family office operates at the highest level. And I loved it, climbing my way up the corporate ladder one rung at a time. But I always felt like something was missing. Like something just at the back of my brain, just something is not right. And then I met Sadoc. And at that time, he was already working on 2 startups. The first was a veterinary diagnostics lab that he was building with his sister. And the second was Ag Help. It was a job board for agriculture workers. And just seeing him operate in that entrepreneurial space was enough to awaken my own entrepreneurial spirit, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. So then about 4 months into our relationship, I bring home a puppy. And he was trapped. Completely and utterly puppy trapped. And as she grew up, we started to experience a lot of the issues that pet parents face today, which we're definitely going to get into a little bit later. But the biggest thing that we noticed at first was the expense. So we started ideating together. How could we leverage the lab he was already working on to make veterinary care more affordable for pet parents? And our big idea, our brilliance, resulted in Catch DX. Now, the idea with Catch is that we would send veterinary technicians into people's homes. They would take samples from the pet, so think like blood work, fecal sample, whatever. We would then take those samples to our lab, test it, generate a diagnostics report, give that to the pet parent, and then they could take that to their veterinarian to then save them money on their labs. Like super streamlined, super simple, right? And I got to a point where I'm like, this is it. And I quit my job and I told everybody I had ever met that I was leaving to start a company called Catch and to see us on the NASDAQ one day. And it was only about a month after I quit that I started to feel like we weren't going down the right path with Catch. To start, the name completely sucks. Like, what does that even mean? So, and we realized that we came up with this idea with doing basically zero customer discovery. We had come up with this idea based on our own experience as pet parents and from what we knew about the lab, about veterinary medicine at the time. So most commonly, pet parents, if you're out there in the audience, you know, you have to take your pet to the vet at least once a year for their wellness. And then when they're not feeling well. But most pet parents couldn't tell you what type of vaccines they need. And they certainly can't tell you all of the diagnostics that they need. And we realized there was just too much pet parent education that needed to happen in order for them to realize that they needed our service. So we pivoted and we realized that we needed a vet. So I called up the only vet that I knew at the time, a friend of mine from undergrad. I'm like, hey, Brad, it's me, Rachel Berkal. We haven't talked in like 8 years, but I heard you're a vet now. Congrats. And I have this vet lab. I quit my job, by the way. I have this vet lab. And what do you think about taking the show on the road and doing veterinary care from people's homes? And then we take the stuff back to the lab, one-stop shop. What do you think? And he loved it. Immediately, he was like, yes, I can absolutely see the value on the pet side. But then he also started to educate us on how veterinarians and veterinary support staff would find value in what we were doing as well. So with Brad's stamp of approval, we were down a new path. And we started ideating new business names, and from our dining room came up with Vetr Health. And with the lab at the nucleus of our business, Vetr as it exists today started to take form. And we're definitely going to talk about the business a bit more when the rest of the team comes up here, but I want to share this. In 2020, I had no idea that a Bumble date would lead to building a business and a fiance. In college, I changed paths multiple times before finding my way. And when I was laid off, I thought my career was over, only to find something better waiting for me. So every experience, whether it felt like a step forward, a setback, or a detour, it was all leading me to my own path and preparing me for what was next. So trust me when I tell you to trust your path, because you are exactly where you need to be. In that same breath, I'm going to tell you to be willing to course correct. I quit my job and told everybody to find catch on the NASDAQ one day, only a month later to realize that we were building the wrong thing. But instead of doubling down on a flawed idea, we listened, we learned, and we pivoted. That shift from focusing strictly on diagnostics to full in-home veterinary care changed everything. And being adaptable isn't failure. It's how the best ideas are born. And if I've learned one thing, it is to trust yourself and to take up space. When I quit my job, it wasn't because I had all the answers. I quit because I knew if I spent my whole life building someone else's dream, I would never get a chance to build my own. And if I didn't at least try, I would never know what was possible. Success isn't defined by a single moment or a milestone. It is a moving target. It takes hard work, resilience, and a willingness to course correct when things don't go as planned. But without confidence, without wholly believing in yourself and what you're building, you will never get far enough to figure the rest out. And if I'm being honest, I don't know if I'll feel like I've ever made it, because I keep moving the goalpost. I'm not standing up here today. Sadoc and I aren't here because we have all the answers, we figured it all out, or our work is done. We're an early stage startup. This journey is a long one, and we have a shit ton of work to do. But what I hope you take away from our time today is that it's possible. You are exactly where you need to be. You can pivot when something isn't working out. And if you trust yourself and take up space and bring main character energy to your own life every single day, I promise you it will lead to success. Thank you.
So we're now going to transition into the Q&A portion of the evening, and I'm going to invite Sadoc and Penny Lane to join us on stage, and we're going to hear a little bit more about Vetr Health and about their journey. So, Rachel, thanks so much for sharing about your journey and about your story. Sadoc, we want to hear more from you about your background, and was your path as winding as Rachel's, and how did it lead to starting Vetr Health?
Yeah, so I think mine was very similar in that I didn't know what I wanted to do early on. I did know that I wanted to be in the medical field, so I went ahead and studied medical technology at Michigan State. So it's basically lab work. And after I left Michigan State, I wasn't sure that I wanted to work in a lab. So I took a sales job, and I ended up in pharmaceutical sales, which was a good combination of my medical background and what I wanted to do, working with people. And that was going very well, but I still, similar to Rachel, I felt like there was wanted something more, something entrepreneurial. I was really into problem solving. And so that's when my sister and I ideated the concept of RS Diagnostics, which ended up being doing diagnostic services for veterinarians in Denver. So I moved to Denver and we slowly grew that business. And that was bootstrapped, so it was very much a small operation. But I'm one of 8 kids, and I like to think that my siblings confide in me and as a problem solver. So I had another brother of mine who actually came to me with a business idea called Ag Help, and that was based on our family's shared experience of working as migrant farm workers across the country. So growing up, we would travel the country and harvest different crops, and we kind of felt the need for getting connected to social services, things that helped the transient population that was kind of the working poor that needed these ancillary services like healthcare or even just enrolling in school, things like that across the country. So that, I think, between those two entrepreneurial journeys of mine, I really got exposure to what it meant to be an entrepreneur. And with Ag Help specifically, I went through a program called TechStars, which is an accelerator for startups, and I really sharpened my skills in the entrepreneurial space. So I learned how to raise money in venture capital. I learned how to pitch. So we raised a lot of money in straight pitch competitions, like over 150K. So I really sharpened myself with Ag Help to take me to the next level, and now we have Vetr.
So awesome. So along with your journey, we also have the famous Penny Lane. So we can't ignore her being so cute up here. Hey, tell us how she inspired you both to start Vetr Health.
She's like, see? Yeah, so we got Penny very early on when we were dating. And Sadoc tried to talk me out of getting a dog. I was like too stressed out at my job. He's like, you got a lot going on. Are you really sure adding a puppy is the right thing for your life right now? And I was like, maybe this is not the right thing. So I brought home the puppy, and immediately he was her dad. But getting her first vet appointment on the calendar was essential. And so they told me, I finally find a vet, make the appointment. They're like, you need to bring a fecal sample. So I'm telling him we're getting ready. I'm like, we need a fecal sample. He tells me, no, we don't. I'm like, yeah, they said to bring a fecal sample. He's like, no, we'll send it to our lab. And even though I knew about the lab, that was when the light bulb went off for me. Like, oh yeah, I can save at least $50 on my vet bill by sending it to their lab to test. But then I was like, will they even allow me to do that? She's like, you can do whatever you want. It's your dog. And I'm like, all right, yeah, fair point. So really, it all started with dog shit. Yeah.
Yeah. So having been doing this in Denver, I really got a under the hood look at what it meant to run these tests, how much people were charging to run these simple tests that we could do for really pennies on the dollar. So that was the RS Diagnostics was the precursor to Catch and then Vetr Health.
Yeah. Being a pet parent always has its challenges, as we know, but every startup always solves a real world issue. So tell us about how you're starting to tackle those issues with Vetr Health, and what's that been like?
So I think there's really a couple of things that are causing a lot of the issues in veterinary medicine. And the one of the biggest ones is consolidation. So larger corporations are buying independently owned clinics. And once they do that, they're prioritizing profits over pets and outcomes. Additionally, there are 2 diagnostics labs that dominate the market, and they set the prices of those lab tests. And so then in turn, the veterinarians have to charge more on top of to make enough money to operate. And one interesting fact is the largest employer of veterinarians is Mars, as in the candy company. And they also own Antech, which is one of those 2 major labs that dominates the market. So Mars is one of the kind of the bigger players that sets the tone for the majority of vet pricing.
Yeah, and so that's the root of the problem. But the symptoms of the problem are felt by us, the pet parents and the pets. So this is all leading to a diminishing quality of care for pets and veterinary professionals. So humans, on average, we get 20 minutes with our primary care physician. Pets get about half that, with the average exam time down to only 12 minutes per pet. And that's for all the things, for blood draws, vaccines, any questions the pet parents have. And that simply isn't enough time to treat and diagnose any patient. And that revolving door of pets, 12 minutes, some vets are seeing 4 to 6 patients an hour. That is a huge contributing factor to the burnout that's happening in veterinary medicine. And they're dropping out of the profession because it very quickly is not about the pets anymore. They get into it because it's about the pets. But then now this consolidation, it is only about profit. In addition to that, so diminishing quality of care, and as that continues to decline, the price tag does not. Like we talked about, our own experience was noticing how expensive it was. But the cost of vet care is rising at a rate faster than any other category of pet spending. With 30%, this is 2021 to 2024. The cost of vet care rose by 30%, with the next closest category, food, only going up by 22.5%. I mean, that's insane, and pet parents are feeling that, and it's pricing some people out of having pets.
Absolutely. So, Vetr Health, give us your quick elevator pitch of what it is, and how are you guys positioning yourself at the forefront of this innovation in veterinary medicine?
We love an elevator pitch.
We did love it.
We have a captive audience. Of course, I'm going to tell you about our startup. So Vetr Health is an in-home veterinary care service where we provide all of the wellness care a pet needs annually, and we do it all from the comfort of your home. So our memberships include the in-home visits, their vaccines and testing, and unlimited telehealth, all powered through our digital platform, and we offer it all for $49.99 a month. So it helps pet parents budget, obviously. But in addition to the Vetr value that we're offering, pets also experience longer appointment times where they're most comfortable. So being in their home environment, when you think about going to the vet, there's all these triggers that stack. So getting in the car or getting in the carrier, if you have a cat, is one trigger. Getting in the car, now I'm even more freaked out. Now I'm in the waiting room, I'm even more freaked out. Now I'm in the back, like smells, other pets, like all of these triggers stacked so that by the time they get into the vet, it's like level 10 stress. I'm freaking out. But when we do it at home, all of those triggers collapse and they're in their own space. And it's better for the pets. It's better for the pet parents because they also feed off of our anxiety. But it's better for the vets as well, because now these professionals have more time to treat and diagnose away from the stressors that they would normally experience in the clinic. And we dedicate up to 45 minutes for these appointments. So think back to that 12-minute stat. We're tripling. And we definitely have enough time to do all of our care and make sure that our pet parents have enough time to ask anything and everything that they want from our team.
Yeah. So given all of this, like going into the future, what do you guys see as the next big innovation in veterinary medicine?
So right now, I think innovation is happening in all industries. And the most similar, I think that we can draw the parallel to is human medicine. So AI is obviously the big thing right now, and it's transforming how we diagnose clinically as it's supporting decision making. It's streamlining, note-taking for patient charts. And the way we're utilizing it currently is in the lab. So we're starting to make AI models that will help identify things like parasites, other things that we look at under the microscope. So whether that's blood, fecal, urine, any of those things can be used to train a model, and then hopefully so right now that'll help streamline our process, but in the future we hope to offer this more widely to other veterinarians to hopefully capture more revenue and streamline their process as well.
Absolutely. I'm sure my clinics would love to have something like this. So we know as startups, a lot of the time the focus is on profitability, but from the beginning, Vetr Health has always prioritized positive community impact instead. How are you guys balancing both as entrepreneurs in this startup?
I love that question. Also, we're going to need a moment for Phyla.
Oh, please. No, please. Same to the guy. Thank you.
I am so impressed. I am trying to convince her not to go to vet school and to come work for us. I think every entrepreneur, every founder has to be driven by their why. Like, you have to have a deep-rooted connection to why you are building what you are building. Because if you're just solving a problem without a personal connection or something that is driving you, it feels fake. So for me, I think I knew I wanted to be in the entrepreneurial space, but it took me a little bit to figure out my personal why for building Vetr. Of course, I'm a dog mom, so I of course want the best care possible for her. But it really, once we started recruiting veterinarians, it was hard for us to find vets. So we started to do a lot more research and a lot more customer discovery on the vet side of things. So definitely understood pet parents right off the bat. But it took us a while to realize, okay, why is it so hard for us to recruit a vet? What's going on here? That's when we started to learn about the burnout, first of all. But then we started to learn about this big gender discrepancy in pay. And we know nationally there is a gender pay gap. In vet med, it's especially concerning to me because women make up a disproportionate amount of veterinarians and dominate this field. And they are still being underpaid compared to their male counterparts. And when you look at the profile of graduating classes of veterinarians, they are 9-to-1 women to men. So help me understand why they still make 83% of their male counterparts. I know that I can't solve the national pay gap, but what I can do is make a hell of a lot of noise about it in the vet space and say that this gender pay gap, it ends with Vetr for us, first of all. We're going to ensure that our female team members are paid what they are worth at an equitable wage. And then I hope that inspires other vet companies out there there is so much male leadership, very little female leadership at the top, which, explains a lot. But I hope that it inspires other companies to be like, oh, yeah, maybe we should think about this. This is a field dominated by women who the leadership is not reflecting what the total demographic of this profession looks like. And we need to change that. So for me, that is what lights me up. So I think it's an industry impact. And then I think there's that, of course. But then when I think about just the business model, of course, our services are convenience for people who want the convenience. But it also can be a necessity for someone who is a senior who can't drive, who has mobility limitations, for someone who is using a service animal for their day-to-day life, and transportation might be inaccessible. So I think there is absolutely a path and a way in which Vetr will be able to support those populations who either need it for those reasons or who are on low or fixed income. And hopefully, as we continue to grow and improve our own internal costs, we can pass those savings along. So I think it's a balance of industry impact and community impact. But
absolutely. And as someone that has experienced that pay gap working in veterinary medicine for a couple of years, I absolutely appreciate your advocacy for these marginalized groups in our community. So with that being said, tell us about your success story. We have a women and minority run business here who is so successful. Tell us what that has been like in this space.
Well, I want to start by saying we feel so lucky that we are building our startup in Grand Rapids. The first money in, we were at Start Garden 100. That was $20,000 first money. And Start Garden focuses on underrepresented founders. From there, we've been supported by the MSU Research Foundation, and they have a focus on supporting underrepresented founders. So we're supported here, and we're lucky to be building our startup in Grand Rapids. But when you zoom out and you look at the national landscape, women and minority-owned businesses only receive a very small fraction of the total venture capital dollars that are out there for high-growth companies like ours. So we might be a bigger fish in this smaller pond, surrounded by people who appreciate who we are and who don't judge what we're doing based on being a women and minority-owned business, but that's not the case nationally.
And I think it's politically DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, having a tough time. But I always like to think back to, like, what's the purpose of diversity, equity, and inclusion? We know that communities like LGBTQ plus, women, other minority groups, they are just as capable. They have all the skills, intelligence, grit needed to perform at a high level, to whether that's in business, in politics, wherever it may be. And it's important to realize that although those skills are evenly distributed throughout all these populations, opportunity isn't. Similar to what's going on here in venture capital. So I think it's important to, one, as a minority and women-owned business, to kind of always tell ourselves that we are capable, and inherently we can be successful and will be.
And it's hard to show up every day as a woman, as a female business owner, building a business when you know people want to erase you. But and I was talking to my therapist about this the other day, because I'm like, it's like, so talking about it, and she's like, if you don't show up as a female business owner, if you don't show up, you let them win. So show up every day and don't let them win. So like, just keep doing it, keep showing up, and don't let them win.
Yes, absolutely. So for startups, a lot of people are feeling unqualified or unsure of how to proceed. What would you guys say to encourage them to keep going and keep pursuing their goals?
Yeah. I think once you realize that nobody knows what they're doing, it all becomes a lot easier. Like, I really feel like most people show up every day and they're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I think I will go through my whole life being like, I have no idea how to do this. I have no idea what nobody knows what they're doing. So I think if you just this is going back to what I said earlier. If you trust yourself and you take up space and you show up confidently in what you know, who's gonna question you? And you are the own subject matter expert in what you're building. So be confident, show up, and do the work every day. And who's gonna tell you you're wrong?
And even just piggybacking off of what she was explaining earlier in the presentation, you're exactly where you need to be. I think people put a lot of pressure on themselves to know what they're good at early on, or find their passion early on. But for some people, that doesn't come for years down the road. So there are companies like McDonald's and some of these big companies, which I'm sure you've probably heard of, that some of the founders didn't get started until later in life. So I encourage you guys to just accept where you are, course correct, do all the things that you think are the right thing to do, because in the end, it will ultimately fuel and spark, whether that's an entrepreneurial journey or a different job that you might not know is out there.
And it's never too late to make a change. Like, it is never too late to start anything new. I hate when people are like, oh, I'm too old to do that. Like, no, you're not. No, Martha Stewart, like, yes, she was 35 when she started her first catering company, but she was like in her 50s by the time she started her conglomerate as it exists today. So it's never too late. And I do feel like it is really important to surround yourself with people, with friends, with your life partners who are going to champion you and who are going to lift you up every single day. Because if you don't have that person that like really believes in you, or a group of people or your friends who really believe in you, it is so much harder. And you don't realize how sometimes having shitty people in your life can be holding you back. So take a look at who is around you and make some cuts. Like, if they're not adding value to their life, if they're making you feel inferior, cut them out.
Yes.
Cut them out.
Yes, definitely. So, looking back on all the whole journey? What is the biggest like growth hack or key insight that you've gained that you would want other entrepreneurs to know about?
Yeah. There's so much. There's so much. It's hard to boil it down into just like one thing. But I think one of the biggest things that I noticed, so my background before this was corporate America. And all of you are, not all of you, a lot of you in here are in college and are told to network. Network. And I think there's a difference between networking and building community. And I think when I was at Meijer, the only people, so I lived in Grand Rapids for almost 10 years before I left to start Vetr. I had zero friends. I knew zero people outside of Meijer. Like that was my life. And it wasn't until I left that job and I started this business that I felt like, oh, yeah, like I live here. Like I feel so much more connected to my community now being in startup land and being able to connect and talk to people in all different facets of business and in Grand Rapids and in general. So I think it's less about the network and also like when you in a corporate environment, the network is all about who do I need to know to help get me to that next step, to get me to that next stop. Like it's a very altruistic sense of how am I going about this relationship building. But then when I was out of that, I realized, and I met Sadoc, I started to learn the startup land way of networking.
Yeah, I think even just taking that mindset and shifting it from networking to building your own community, you kind of think about how do you build a community? Like how are you a good neighbor? And sometimes you might shovel the walkway for your neighbor. Maybe you bake them a pie, or you do things and not expect anything in return. And when you network in that same fashion, and one thing I learned in Techstars was a concept of giving first. So making sure that you're making that connection or you're, help sharing that wisdom that you had, whether that's in business or in personal life. So I think taking that mindset of building a community and giving before you actually receive is the most successful way, one, to build the network and community, but also, live life really.
And I think the concept when we first started working on this, I forget who he wanted an introduction to, but he was like, do you think so-and-so would make a warm intro for us? I'm like, what's a warm intro? Like, what are you talking about? Like in my past, it was if you wanted to know someone or wanted to meet someone, they would send you their email and be like, all right, good luck. Here's their contact information. But it wasn't until I, started working on in startup world that it was like, no, you make a warm intro as if you're like, okay, I know Vila, and I know Vila wants to go to vet school. And I'm going to introduce Vila to someone I know at Michigan State who is in their veterinary program because maybe that will help Vila in her application process. And on an email together, I am making that connection, which sounds like common sense, but that wasn't how I was thinking about it up until a few years ago. And to give you, and even if you feel like your network or who you know is small, it isn't. So to give you another example, I'm in a pitch competition with a woman who is who is starting a gluten-free bakery here in Grand Rapids. My cousin in Texas has been running a gluten-free bakery for decades. And this is not someone in my business network. It's not someone I know in Grand Rapids. It is a literal family member that I'm like, oh, he's been at this for several years. He should know this woman so that maybe she can learn something from him and help her business flourish here. So doesn't have to be someone within your professional network. It can be who is one person that I know that I can introduce them to that might help them on their journey. And the more that you can do that, the more that you can give first and put out in the community and help as many people, you have no idea the value that could add to that person's journey and to what they're working on. So, yeah.
So, for making friends.
Yeah, first.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's give it up for how amazing is this couple right here. And they're doing so wonderful. So now, we're, like we said, we're all about making friends. We're going to open it up now to audience Q&A if we still have the time. So Color over here has a little microphone. If anyone has any questions or anything, say how's it looking?
You guys were wonderful, by the way. So thank you for being here. I had a question. I was really intrigued by you guys talking about how medical advances would streamline your process, not just for your startup company, but maybe for the industry as a whole. We know those large conglomerates would probably tuck away maybe those added pennies on the dollar when they start streamlining their processes. Do you guys see yourself taking those advancements to maybe lower costs to serve more of the community? Or do you guys see yourself taking that money to maybe grow your startups so you can service a larger community? Thank you.
I think it could be both. I feel like right now the veterinarians are finding it difficult to find profit in just the daily operations. So they're having to charge more for their services or pharmaceuticals. But I think even just streamlining some of those processes, like identifying, not having to send out those fecal samples, doing that in-house, they can keep prices the same or lower and still make profit from that. So I think as we streamline and test things out ourselves and in like the real world application of running our business, we'll find out what services and technology other vets would like to use. And so we'll be kind of the testing ground to see what other vets would like to use in the future.
Hi, I'm curious about the connection between your in-home vet services here and the diagnostics lab that you use, because what I heard was Denver. And so in my mind, I'm thinking if you have to send things to Denver, there's a time loss. Do you have more than the Denver location?
Yeah, that's a good question. We moved the lab here to Grand Rapids when we started Vetr. But yeah, the original lab was based in Denver. But yes. Penny has a brand new Grand Valley scarf, by the way. So still beautiful. We need a moment for her Laker blue.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much for coming. I had actually 2 questions. The first is, how did you deal with the frustration of first having to pivot in your original business model? And the second, I'm wondering, is more of your business plan. If you're having to re-educate your client on your operational model, how are you getting new clients? Is that through the vets, or are you reaching out to through the vets like network, or is it through the customers, going to the customers first? I'm just wondering about your business model, how you're getting new customers.
Yeah. I think the first pivot with Catch was easier because we were still very shiny and excited about like our startup. So I think we were like, oh shit, we need to pivot right now. So it was like we didn't have time to really, we weren't too far down a path, I guess, with Catch before we made that pivot. So we were lucky that, a month in we were like, nope, this is probably not it. So it wasn't as tough as I initially thought it might be to make a big pivot like that. On the business model side, so I think a lot of our customers that we have now, our early adopters, are people who know they need in-home care because they've had a bad experience at the vet, or because they do have mobility limitations, or because their pet is super anxious. And they see, they're like, okay, they're starting to understand in-home or concierge medicine on the human side. And pet parents are starting to understand in-home euthanasia. So the idea of concierge medicine or in-home medicine for pets is becoming a bit more, I guess, mainstream or well-known. But beyond that, we don't necessarily advertise through veterinarians. We partner with independently owned clinics here in Grand Rapids. So if we did need to send someone in for a surgery or something, we could send them to a clinic that we're friends with and that we know. But that's the $1 million question, is what marketing strategies are going to convert the most customers as we continue to grow. And that education piece of, hey, this is out there, in-home care exists, but you don't have to pay a premium for it with Vetr because of the way we're structured. We can offer an affordable product and a good value for vet care, but still do it in your home and have that convenience. So if you got any marketing ideas,
could you guys, but I actually have another question after this, but it's not really a question. But anyways, first question, could you guys speak more to how you guys show up as leaders in your work, especially as a startup? I imagine it looks a little bit different, but what are some things that you like to practice as leaders in your business?
Yeah. I think I had to soften my corporate approach in the beginning, just because that's all I knew. But I think for us, communication and transparency with our team is key. But I also think there's so much about relationship building and truly knowing and understanding what is going on in your team member's life. I think I always appreciated leaders who were like, who are you? Like, tell me about you. Like, I want to know about your family. I want to know about your kids. I want to know what sports they're in. I want to know that you're taking a tap dancing class and that you do that on Tuesday nights. And that it helps humanize all of the work that we're doing so we can have empathy for each other when, I need to know, I want to know that your grandpa's in the hospital so that I can approach you with that level of empathy when you come in and you're having a bad day on a Tuesday. And why is that? So I think we really try to stay out of the box towards each other. And there's a whole book on that if you're interested in it. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. It's one of my favorite books. But it's really approaching every team member with a level of humanity and empathy.
I think for me, the part I like the most is like tapping into that entrepreneurial spirit of our employees, whether that's like if they have an idea or do they think we could improve on our process? So for us, it's that transparency and listening, but also like empowering our coworkers to really like, is there a better way to do this? Like, this is historically how things are done, but if you think there's a better way, like, let's try that. Let's put everything on like to the test and see if we can, make this better and more streamlined.
Thank you.
When you get someone that's been to their office, everyone's just friends. Everyone seems so happy to be there. They're all working towards their common goal. They're great.
Thank you. My second kind of question was, have you considered maybe bridging the gap between networking, dating apps, and pets? And like, basically swiping right on pets and then making friends off that?
You should start that. You should do that. You could do that.
That's not my wheelhouse. I'm no pun intended. It's wheelhouse talk, but I'm just the idea guy. I don't.
I think that's so great. No, I definitely. We want our brand to. So people love doing stuff with their pets. They love planning things with their pets. They love doing we plan outings where Penny can come with us. So we want to create spaces where people can go and hang out with their pets and hopefully make some friends, or maybe they're at a Vetr event and meet their, person one day. Like, that would be amazing. So I definitely think there's something there in that. How can we make our brand cool? It is really cool. Wait, say it again. Dates? Hey, I mean, and how do we make friends as adults? Like, it's hard. People, I was single for a while before I met him. So they're all these guys out here trying to just have a dog and maybe I'll meet a girl because my dog's so cute. It's true. It's true.
We've got more questions down here. I don't know where the microphone is. Hello. It sounds like you guys are doing awesome work, and especially with the pay gap stuff. I was just wondering, because I know you guys are also really still pretty new, but down the line, are you guys thinking of maybe trying to become a B Corp?
I think, that's definitely something we would explore that. And even, I think we've thought about even becoming employee owned at some point. So I think we really want to build something that's worth sustaining for the long term. We're not trying to raise a bunch of venture capital, exit to Mars and sell. I think there's an opportunity to build something that's significant, and whether that's taking on a B Corp status or exiting to employees. I mean, I think if those are our goals, and hopefully we can one day do that kind of thing, because I think it's important to realize the mission part of it and not just strictly be about the profits of this. So
one of the things I really appreciated was when you brought up private equity. I feel that is such a problem in our society. and you are an answer to private equity. Did you know that going in, that this would help solve some of these private equity issues that's hitting veterinary clinics, or was that something that surprised you?
I think we had a sort of an idea, but not to the degree that we do now. And there's two really good podcasts about private equity in veterinary world specifically. Freakonomics. Did I say that yet? No. Freakonomics has two really good podcasts that you should go listen. It's all about who owns your vet, and it explains it really well. But no, I think at first, not really. And then once we started, because we were figuring out, like, how can we explain this problem to people? And we really shied away in the beginning from talking about the consolidation. And I don't know, like, maybe somebody will come for us at some point. But I mean, I think it is important. And I think we're feeling it on the human healthcare side. So when you can make those parallels and see the effects of it on the human side, then it makes a lot more sense in understanding the root of the problem on the vet side and vet care side as well. Yeah.
Hi. Thank you guys so much for your presentation. So you talked about there was kind of a discrepancy between pet parents' needs and their awareness of their needs. So within your program, have you spearheaded any initiatives to address that gap or kind of embedded that within your services?
Yeah, I think with the longer appointment times, we're kind of learning what the concerns are from pet parents, like what they're looking for from their breed specifically, what their issues are, how to treat these chronic issues. So I think we're learning what kind of appetite pet parents have for doing their own educate, like what they want to be more educated on. And I think historically that hasn't been a huge priority for vet clinics. So I think we're still learning. But what we're finding is there is definitely that level of, like, people aren't going to go buy an at-home, fecal test and send that in and do their own thing. But somebody will learn about, like, what that diagnosis from us might mean and how to better treat that. So I think there's a level of, like, figuring out how involved they want to be. But since we have so much time, I think we're taking a lot of time to really listen to what people want and still trying to implement things that will be beneficial.
And I think thinking back on it, so pet parents know that they take their pet to the vet at least once a year. I mean, most do. So that's why our membership includes 2 in-home visits. So they know that annual visit is always included. And then that second one is for sick visit or, whatever else they might need it for. So I think the way that we've boiled it down now into being like, it's a monthly subscription. It's not a subscription. I don't like that. It is a monthly payment to cover your annual wellness needs. And they still don't really know what that means. They're like, okay, it includes all my vet care. Still don't really know what that means. But then once we lay it out, so we do have to do some pet parent education of, like, okay, side by side, if we showed you all the things that we're including compared to what that would cost you in a traditional clinic, this is what it is with us versus somebody else. So it still is, evolving in how we educate the pet parents, but we've tried to structure it so that even if they don't totally get what they're getting, we'll be there at least once a year.
All right. Thanks for these great questions and engagement. If you could join me in one round of that.
And thank you all so much for having us tonight. To Viola for being here and for moderating, great for job. The partnership team. Yes, great job, Viola.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Sadoc, Rachel, and Viola, for your authenticity, your wisdom, your inspiration. I think this was really meaningful for me, and truthfully, your candor, I think, is really important. I have been self-employed. My husband's self-employed, and really any entrepreneur that you see that's out there, any business that's successful, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, trial and error, starts and stops. And so there's a great deal of wisdom and truth in what is being offered here. And so I hope that you will take these things to heart and gain some inspiration for your own journeys as you're leaving here today. As you are leaving here today, there's a lovely reception here. So come pet the dog, say hello, connect with one another, but have a good night if you don't get to say hello. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.